We left off last Friday with Bartimaeus being captured at Sholto Penn's shop. And he's not only captured, but he gets put into page 214, this thing that we're told is a mournful orb. And the person who puts him in that is a rather thin woman whose name we will learn is Jessica Whitwell. She is not somebody you want to mess around with, essentially. Okay? And bottom of 216 and top of 217, she and Sholto Penn are talking to Bartimaeus. And Bartimaeus says, that he wants to come up with a good kind of smart alecky answer, but he can't. And he would consider, spilling the beans. He would consider telling them everything he knows about Nathaniel and everything he knows about Simon Lovelace and stealing the amulet and all that kind of stuff. But he says, top of page 217, but if he did, I would doom myself. Why? Good chance they would go ahead and squish me anyways. 2, even if they did let me go, he says, Nathaniel would then be killed or otherwise inconvenienced, and I'd be bound for old Chokey, that is the tin with the rosemary in it, at the bottom of the Thames. He said, I'd rather die quickly than slowly and painfully for an eternity. So, she says, time's up. And Bartimaeus says, and then, as if written by the hand of a bad novelist, okay, that's Jonathan Strauss's little poking fun at himself, an incredible thing happened. Why is this the hand of a bad novelist? You have from ancient Greek literature this technique called the Deus ex machina, okay, which means God from the machine, okay? And what that refers to is in ancient Greek drama, if a writer created a story in which the main character, let's say, proverbially paints himself into a corner. Now, what's that metaphor from? Well, you paint, and you're in the corner, and you have all this wet paint around you. What can't you do? You can't walk across the paint because then you mess up the paint. So, when a writer gets his main character into a corner that he can't escape from, the writer then employs the God from the machine. What is that? Well, in ancient Greek literature, it was literally a God figure or character being lowered from the heavens to, wave a wand or something and remove the person from his or her situation. In the 1930s, American Westerns, the God from the machine took the course, took the form of the cavalry riding over the hill just in time to rescue, the settlers from the Indians who were getting ready to slaughter them, et cetera, et cetera. We still see this thing all over the place in film. All right? It was just my son last night. I think I've mentioned, wants to watch all the Marvel films before the next Avengers comes out. And so last night we watched, and when I should have been grading, we watched Infinity War. Okay? Almost the very end of Infinity War. Not quite, but you literally get a God from the machine, right? Because Thor shows up out of nowhere with a new, not a hammer, but an axe, kind of a thing. But what's the difference? In that version, he doesn't bring about, the resolution that these did, okay? So, the incredible thing, what does the word incredible mean? Literally. We think it means amazing, wonderful. Literally, it means not unable to credit, believe. It's something that is unbelievable. Okay? Your mind can't wrap your head around it. So, and then as if written by the hand of a bad novelist, an incredible thing happened. What was the incredible thing? He's being summoned. So what's Bartimaeus kind of thinking? At this point, notice, pause, turn the page. He's being summoned. He's going to be removed from this orb. He's going to be removed from this situation back to Nathaniel. Okay? Look at the little footnote at the bottom of 217. Thoughtful persons, okay, this is going back to, thinking of being stuck in old chokey forever. Thoughtful persons might at this point object that since Lovelace had stolen the amulet and was thus working against the government, it might have been worth a gamble to tell them about his crimes. Perhaps both Nathaniel and I might have been let off for services rendered. Notice, perhaps. True, but unfortunately there was no knowing who else was involved with Lovelace's plot. And since Sholto Pym himself had been lunching with Lovelace the previous day, there was certainly no trusting him. Okay? So risks outweighed the benefits. So he's thinking, I'm going to be summoned out of here. And the lady says, no, that's not going to happen. Okay? So we're going to skip a bunch. The orb keeps shrinking. So Bartimaeus keeps changing his form into a smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller form until ultimately what will happen to the physical form he takes? Because the orb gets smaller and smaller and smaller. It'll disappear. That is, he won't revert back to his non-material or spiritual essence. He'll be destroyed. When his physical form, his physical manifestation that he has taken on is destroyed, he'll be destroyed. Okay? So it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller gradually. What's he realize? That's like looking at the proverbial, sand clock thing, and the grains are falling. He's counting them down. Okay? But he does get rescued, by surprisingly two people we don't expect to. We'll get to that in a moment. Turn to pages 226 and following. So Nathaniel's done the incantation to summon Bartimaeus back, and he hasn't come. What immediately goes through his mind? Yeah, that's not good. He did the incantation correctly. He's got the chalk marks all drawn. He should come. So the fact that he hasn't come means there's a problem somewhere. Okay? So he goes downstairs because he's been called, and he runs into his master who's coming up the stairs, page 227. Okay? And his master notices a smell, an odor about him, page 228. What's that smell, sir? The odor, it clings to you. He's, sorry, I forgot to take a bath this morning. He goes, no, that's not it. It's not that odor, he says. It's rosemary and St. John's wort. He says, what are you doing? So he goes up to the boys' room. He looks around. He sees some things. He doesn't. And then he turns over the rug. And he sees the pentacle. He sees two of them, in fact. And he says, page 230, and now we're finally told this kind of information about Bartimaeus that we haven't been told before. He says, You've dabbled right about in the middle. You've dabbled with works of magic that you cannot hope to comprehend. I see Faust's Compendium, The Mouth of Ptolemy, these are books. You have summoned or attempted to summon a genie of at least the 14th level, even tried to bind it with Adelbrand's pentacle, a feat that I would balk at. That is, I wouldn't even attempt this. So what does that tell us, first of all, about Nathaniel? Because he's done it. He hasn't attempted it. He's actually done it. He's head and shoulders above his master. Okay? The fact that you undoubtedly failed in no way mitigates your crime. Now, notice, does Nathaniel fess up? Does he say, no, I have bound it, it's just away now doing a job? No, he doesn't. He tries to lie it all off. Stupid child, have you no concept of what such a being might do to you if you made even the slightest slip? Now, how old is he now? He's still 12. Okay. Have all my lessons over the years meant nothing? I should have known you were not to be trusted last year when your willful act of violence against the guests of my house nearly ruined my career. I should have disposed of you then when you were nameless. No one would have given it a second thought. But now that you are named and will be in the next edition of the Almanac, I cannot get rid of you so easily. So what's he thinking about, really? Himself. He's thinking of his reputation, of his standing in the magical community. Questions will be asked, forms will have to be filled, my judgment will once again be called into doubt. He says, no, I got to think of what I'm going to do to you. Okay? So, Nathaniel's in his room, confined, grounded essentially. Mrs. Underwood comes up. Page 232. And she says, John. Notice she starts to say his name. But now that he has an official name, she's got to forget that birth name. Oh, John, why couldn't you be patient? Well, that was the thing his art teacher had been trying to drill into him since about his 8th birthday or so. Nathaniel says, he'll never forgive me. He said so. She goes, he's angry. He said my career was ruined. I wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't exactly what you deserved. But perhaps if you were open and honest with him about what you've done, there is a small chance that he will listen to you when he returns. He says he won't. He's too angry. Okay? So, she says, he's impressed, actually. I can tell. I think you should confide fully in him. Throw yourself on his mercy. Okay? So he says, I'll do my best. And then she tells him, there's a problem down at the ministry. Bottom of 233. A rogue genie has been caught in central London. What? I don't know the details. Masquerading as one of Mr. Lovelace's imps, etc. Broke into Penn's shop. It's being interrogated. And he's thinking, oh, crap. Why? Because he's tried to summon Bartimaeus. Bartimaeus hasn't returned. He puts 2 and 2 together. Okay? So now he gets his scrying glass out. And again, this is not something Jonathan Stroud invents. It is a thing from quote-unquote magical history, or the history of real magic in our world, or what's perceived to be real magic. And so he wants the scrying glass to try to find Bartimaeus and to also look into what's going on with, what's his name? Okay, so we're going to skip a whole bunch. Who shows up to essentially rescue Bartimaeus? Faquarel and Jabor, right? They're the 2 demons that are employed meaning imprisoned by Simon Lovelace. He has them bound. They don't work for him because they choose to. Okay? And notice how to 57, 58, 59, how Bartimaeus is able to get away from them. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because I want to move forward. So, he goes downstairs, page 263, to try to speak to his master. And Mrs. Underwood says, no, stay here, etc. So, Nathaniel gets the scrying glass, says, my master's in his study, 263. Go close so that I see all. Listen, relay everything he says directly and accurately. So, the scrying glass does. Okay? And what does he learn? This rogue Jenny has escaped, along with 2 other Jennies. Okay? So he orders the imp to return. But there's no answer. Bottom of 265. So, Bartimaeus hasn't returned. Problem 1. Rogue Jenny captured, escapes. Problem 2. The little imp, pretty powerless, but still under his control from his scrying glass, has now not disappeared, but not returned. Okay? So he looks again in the scrying glass, and he sees Underwood's body and such. And then page 267. He'd only taken 2 directions. This is Nathaniel. 2 directions in the direction of the skylight when, without a sound, the translucent head of Arthur Underwood welled up through the floorboards. So he sees his master's head come up through the floor, see-through, glowing with a greenish phosphorescence. At this, an expression appeared on his master's face that Nathaniel had never seen before, not the familiar look of impatient disdain, not even the fury he'd witnessed that morning. First, extreme shock, and then malice. Why? Because Arthur Underwood realizes he has sent this imp to spy on him. That's why the first word out of his mouth is, page 268, traitor. Traitor. You have betrayed me. I shall discover who is guiding you to spy on me. Notice, he makes the same assumption Bartimaeus made. When Nathaniel first summons Bartimaeus, what does Bartimaeus assume? You're working for somebody. Somebody's pulling your puppet strings. Arthur Underwood makes the exact same assumption. Why? What are they both doing? They're underestimating him. Okay? So, prepare yourself, I shall come for you. Voice fades. Nathaniel's thinking, I gotta get out of here. Imp says, you don't have much time left. Let us go. That is, free me. Let me go back to the other place. Okay? Imp says, oh boy, you're in for it now. He's really angry. Even his astral form practically pickled my essence as it went by. Okay? And notice how the imp, again, who's at Nathaniel's mercy, is just, kind of going all carefree in terms of his comments. 269. Oh, what's the matter now? You're a big magician now. Call something up to save your skin. An effort, maybe. Or what about that Bartimaeus? Where's he when you need him? Nasty, ain't it? Being at somebody else's mercy. What's he mean? Go back to old ancient Greek literature. There is another thing in Greek drama, and it's called the reversal. In Greek tragedy, the reversal occurs when the tragic hero is rising. The structure is built kind of like a pyramid. So you have what's called the rising action over here, falling action over here, and this is the climax. So everything's building here. Everything's going great for the tragic hero. He's getting ready to stand on top of the world. That's where the reversal of fortune comes. That's where everything goes other way around. Okay? See the same thing in films today. Why? It's kind of a human nature aspect. So, what does the imp say? Now you know what it's like to be a spirit. Not literally, because Nathaniel isn't literally a spirit, but what does he mean? Now you're going to be totally at your master's mercy, just like I'm totally at your mercy. Or Bartimaeus is totally at your mercy. Being at someone else's mercy, now you know what it feels like. Face it, kid, you're on your own. You've got no one there to help you. Well, the imp doesn't have anyone to help him. Bartimaeus kind of did, but that was a different case. So, he's at the window, and there's a pigeon knocking with its beak. And he's like, Bartimaeus? Takes Underwood a moment to get in. He's tired, out of breath. And he says, who's controlling you? Who are your enemies? No one. Is it Duval? Who's Duval? No. Head of the secret police. Notice, secret police. What does that tell us about this government or the kind of country that they live in? Any country that has a secret police force, what? It's a totalitarian state, right? Or Mortensen or Lovelace? None of those. Who taught you to make the class? Who told you to spy on me? Okay? There is no one. Even now you continue your lies. And then what do we hear? Simon Lovelace is downstairs. Okay? 27. He's like, what? Arthur Underwood's what? Why would Lovelace be here? What does he want? Martha's like, I don't know. So, make some tea. Why? Because they're British. Make some tea. It's what you do, even for your deadliest enemy. So, Nathaniel and Bartimaeus talk a little bit. The imp says some things. And let's see here. Nathaniel says, 273. You brought Lovelace here? What? Don't lie to me, demon. You betrayed me. You let him here. Bartimaeus, Lovelace here? Wasn't me. I've said nothing. Why? Because Bartimaeus is thinking, I wouldn't betray you. You can consign me for eternity into that tent. Okay? So, a little bit more. Page 274. Nathaniel says, I command you to obey, and notice what Bartimaeus says. Can it, Nat? You're not in the pentacle now. That is, if you're not in the pentacle, you can't make any commands. You can't force me to obey each new order. Running off with the amulet will be fatal. Take it from me. How strong is Underwood? He's like, come on. What? I assume from the size of that beard, he's no great shakes. That is, the length of his beard implies, the weakness of something else. Okay? Can he beat Lovelace? And Nathaniel's like, no. Okay, so here's your chance. That if Lovelace finds the amulet, he might want to keep the whole thing quiet. He'll keep the whole thing quiet, nothing will happen. Does he keep it quiet? Let's jump to the end for a moment. Does he announce to the newspapers? Does he announce to the media? Arthur Underwood stole the thing that I stole from the government? No, he doesn't. He does keep it quiet. Kind of. How? kills them all. That's how he keeps it quiet. Okay? So, 274. Bottom of the page, Bartimaeus says, know ye that I have devotedly carried out my charge. I have spied on Lovelace. I have sought the secrets of the amulet. I have risked all for you, O my master. And the results are, pause, you're an idiot. Why? You've no idea what you've done. In other words, what's the mark of a good magician? Competence. It's not moral, remember. What's the mark of a bad magician? Incompetence. Losing control. He's lost control of this situation. The amulet's so powerful, it's been in government keeping for decades until Lovelace had it stolen. You stole it from Lovelace without knowing what? What it does. His assassin murdered a senior magician for it. In those circumstances, I don't think it's likely he'll worry about killing Underwood to retrieve it. Do you? He says, we've got to do something. Nathaniel says that. He says, true, I'll go watch developments. You stay here like a good little boy. Be ready for a quick exit. What's Nathaniel thinking? No, that's not the kind of thing we have to do. Why? Who's he thinking of? His very next words. Mrs. Underwood. Who was Arthur Underwood thinking of when he went upstairs and started berating Nathaniel? Himself. Only himself. Nathaniel here is thinking of what? Somebody else. Remember what Mrs. Lutyens said, and even Mr. Purcell, the history teacher, said about wizards or magicians, excuse me. One of the things that marks them is honor. Okay? Nathaniel has that notion of honor. Well, he's going to be disabused of it pretty soon. So, Bartimaeus says, 275. I'll give you a tip born of long experience. How long? He's 5,005 years old. Nathaniel's 12. Running's good if your skin needs saving. Better get used to the idea, bud. Okay? He says, go back up to your room and wait. Be prepared to move. Now, what's motivating Bartimaeus? Love, care, concern, altruism for Nathaniel? Self-preservation. Why? If something happens to Nathaniel, there's old Choki to look at from the inside. The 10. So, we go down, chapter 28, and we see Underwood and Lovelace. And notice it's all nice and polite. Underwood invites him into his parlor, asks him if he would like tea and such. Okay. He says, you're flustered, Under. He says, I was engaged with my apprentice. I'm a bit out of breath. That's all. Okay. So he asks Lovelace why he's there. He says it has something to do with the resistance. It's why I'm here. Page 278. Underwood says, of course you have my support. Thefts are an abomination, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And then Lovelace says, 278. I know what carried out the raid. It goes by the unseemly name of Bartimaeus, a middle-ranking Jinny of great impudence and small intelligence. Oh, and we have a footnote. At this point, someone with excellent hearing might have heard a spurt of webbing being shot furiously into the ceiling in the corner of the room. Fortunately, the imp was busy trying to intimidate Underwood by changing its frozen expression very, very slowly. It didn't hear a thing. It is nothing special. That is, Bartimaeus is nothing special. Any half-wit might have summoned it. A half-wit magician, that is, not a commoner. Okay. Lovelace says any half-wit might have summoned this thing. Underwood said, I wouldn't even attempt to. So what does that tell us about Underwood in relation to Lovelace? If Lovelace is speaking honestly here, now he might not. He might be totally facetious. He might just mean, any half-wit. Why? Because Bartimaeus would be a half-wit's kind of a demon. Okay? But if he is speaking honestly, he means Underwood doesn't even rise to the level of a half-wit. He'd be more like a moron. Okay? And what does Underwood say? Nevertheless, this Bartimaeus got away with your item. So, he can't be too slouchy. It was a bungler. It allowed itself to be identified. He said, no, you're right, it got away. Who summoned it? Well, that's why I'm here. And Underwood's like, huh? What? What do you mean? He didn't catch that. How did he get from Bartimaeus to here? He says, Bartimaeus has not been keeping a low profile. He talks about him being captured at Pins, and they followed Bartimaeus across London, and here. Here? You lie. Okay, now who is Simon Lovelace? Is he a nobody? No, he's good friends with the Prime Minister, Rupert Devereux. He's good friends with Sholto Penn, purveyor of goods to magical people and such. Okay? He says, no, it came down your chimney. It was seen. But I wouldn't have guessed it was you, Arthur. Not that I didn't think you coveted my treasures. I just thought you lacked the competence to take them. What has he just said he thought about Arthur Underwood? Bad magician. Why? Lacked competence. Notice, he opens and shuts his mouth like a goldfish, but nothing comes out. I could have forced an entry to your house, notice Lovelace says. In other words, I could have come in and just taken this thing if it's here. He said, no, but I wanted to see if we could reach an arrangement, an agreement. I'm waiting. What's he waiting for? Fess up. Admit it. And everything will be fine. 281. You pompous upstart. See, Underwood's in his late 40s, early 50s. Simon Lovelace is in his mid-20s. How dare you accuse me of theft? I haven't got your object. I know nothing of it. Want it even less. Why should I take it? I'm not a political lick-spittle like you. It's brown-noser, okay? I'm no fawning backstabber. I don't go grubbing about after power and influence like a hog in a cesspit. In other words, he's content being where? Kind of middling level. Simon Lovelace, however, he wants power. Even if I did, I wouldn't bother robbing you. Everyone knows your star has waned. You're not worth harming. No, your agents have got it wrong, or more probably they lie. Bartimaeus is not here. I know nothing of him. Your trinket is not in my house. Okay? So, they keep talking. And let's see here. He breaks his teapot. Let's see. He takes him to his study. And page 287, or starts to. 287. So Nathaniel hears the china tray being broken and stuff, and we're told, top of the page, in that moment, Nathaniel quite forgot his own predicament. Mrs. Underwood was in danger. Okay, forgot his own predicament. Didn't think about himself. The enemy was in the house. In a few moments, he would doubtless force or persuade Underwood to open his study for inspection. The amulet would be found. And then, what might Lovelace do to Underwood or his wife? Bartimaeus told him to wait upstairs. He's thinking, I can't do that. I've got to do something. 288. Okay. Nathaniel sees Lovelace, Underwood, others going to Underwood's study. Despite his extreme dislike, very bottom of the page, despite his extreme dislike of his master, to see him in that state rebelled against everything Nathaniel had been taught. In what state? Underwood led the way. His hair and clothes were disordered, his eyes wild, his back bent as if by a great weight. How is he leading them? By force. Okay. Lovelace is using magic. He has a genie of some sort that is forcing Arthur Underwood to do this. So, yes, his master was weak. Yes, he was petty. Yes, he treated Nathaniel with consistent disdain. But the man was a minister, one of the 300 in the government. And what does Nathaniel think about the government? God's greatest gift to humanity, you know. And we get to the real important part. And he hadn't taken the amulet. Nathaniel had. What's Nathaniel really think? That should be me. That should be happening to me. Somebody else is bearing my pain. Lovelace was a criminal. Who could tell what he might do? Let Underwood take the blame. It's almost like, if you're familiar with The Lord of the Rings, it's almost like the two sides of Gollum. You know, Smeagol and Gollum. Let Underwood take the blame. He deserved it. After all, did he stop Simon Lovelace from beating Nathaniel into unconsciousness a couple of years earlier? No. Let him suffer. Nathaniel's head sinks into his hands. He couldn't run. He couldn't hide. That was the advice of a demon, treacherous and sly. Running and hiding were not the actions of an honorable magician. Could he live with himself if he let his master face Underwood Lovelace alone? No, he couldn't. So, 289, very bottom of the page. He starts going downstairs. He's going to go into his master's study and do what? It was me. He had nothing to do with it. With every step, his common sense screamed at him to turn and flee, but he resisted. Notice his common sense is saying the exact same thing as, how did he put it? A demon, treacherous and sly. To run would be to fail Mrs. Underwood. He would go in there, tell the truth, come what may. Okay? So, he goes in, top of 291, and says, he's telling the truth. I took it. The person you want is me. Next couple paragraphs. It was I. He knows nothing about it. You can leave him alone. Notice, Nathaniel is talking there like he's taken the position of master. He doesn't even name Underwood. He just becomes a pronoun. He. Underwood blinks, shakes, like, what? What are you gibbering about, you fool? You can have no idea what we discussed. Leave here at once. Wait, how did you get out of your room? And Lovelace was like, well, no, let's. Don't be absurd. This stripling cannot have committed the crime. He would have had to bypass my fire axe for a start, not to mention your own defenses. Okay, so he would have had to get past my hex to get into the study, not to mention whatever defenses you have. And what Underwood is doing there is he's acknowledging Lovelace is a more powerful wizard than he is, or magician, sorry. Lovelace says, and raise a genie of the 14th level too. The notion, wait. And he thinks, wait. I caught this brat today with summoning equipment. Adelbrand's pentacle chucked out in his room. He had sophisticated books, the mouth of Ptolemy for one. I assumed he had failed, but what if I was wrong? I caught him spying on me on my stud. If he's capable of that, who knows what he's capable of? Lovelace, yeah, but why should he steal from me? And what does Nathaniel say? Revenge? No, it was just a trick. What's he trying to say with it was just a trick? A foolish, stupid boy's practical joke. A joke. I wanted to get back at you for hitting me that time. I asked the demon to take something of yours. Anything at all. I was going to keep that thing till I was older and till I could find out what it was and how to use it. Hope it wasn't valuable, sir. Very sorry for putting you to any trouble. Okay. His master says, that's it, you're fired, blah, 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 blah. He apologizes. In 293. So Nathaniel goes down there to do what? Louder? To save him. To admit he was the one who did it. Puts himself on the line. And what does his master do? We have both been inconvenienced. He has betrayed me, and from you he has stolen the most powerful treasure, this amulet. And what does he realize almost immediately once the word goes out of his mouth? Damn. Because what happens once you tell the murderer you know the murderer's name? You're going to be the next one on the murderer's list. Why? No witnesses. He glanced toward the small gold oval dangling from Lovelace's hand, and in that sudden, fatal instant, realized what it was. Lovelace says, well, Mandrake, I am almost very impressed. I have been inconvenienced. Why almost? The kid's only 12. Why isn't he really impressed? He says, to summon such a genie as Bartimaeus at your age, it's no mean achievement. To control him over several days, it's even more surprising. So, let's look at your achievements. Here's one. You controlled him over 7 days. That just amps it up a bit. You left me frustrated too. Goes up even more, which is a rare event. And Underwood ignorant, that's pretty normal. All very clever. Only at the end have you fallen back down. In other words, man, you were really rising in my estimation, kid. Why? He says that because he's kind of implying, if you had joined with me, we could have gone places. But you let me down. How? What possessed you to own up to your action? I might have dealt quietly with Underwood and left you alone. Why? Because it wasn't his fault, Nathaniel says. He knew nothing. Your quarrel was with me, whether you knew so or not. He should be left out of it. That's why I came down. And notice, we're told, a sense of the utter futility of his action weighed down upon him. Nathaniel now realizes, I am a damn fool. I should have stayed up in my room and done exactly what Bartimaeus suggested. Lovelace. Some childish concept of nobility? The very same concept that both Mr. Purcell and Miss Lutyens told him about? The honorable course of action, heroic but stupid. Where did you get that notion from? Not from Underwood. I robbed you because you wronged me. I wanted to get back at you. That's all there is to it. Notice, he doesn't use the language of a joke there or a trick. That's more revenge. Punish me if you want. I don't care. And Underwood says, you got him. Do what you want. He says, don't worry, I will. I'll administer his punishment shortly. Good, after I dispose of him. Why me? Okay? And he tells Nathaniel, maybe you don't understand what this thing actually is. Arthur does. Okay? And Underwood says, I won't say anything. You can trust me. You can do with the kid as you want. To bottom of 295 and goes, see, John? See? Such loyalty from a master to his apprentice. Very touching. You see, John, Underwood and I are giving you a final lesson in the art of being a magician. And perhaps with your help, you will understand your error in owning up to me today. You believed in the notion of the honorable magician who takes responsibility for his actions. Mere propaganda. What is propaganda? Lies of the state. State-sanctioned lies. Designed what? To get the people to believe something that the state or government wants them to believe. That isn't true. Okay? There is no honor, no nobility, no justice. Every magician acts only for himself, seizing each opportunity he can. When he is weak, he avoids danger, which is why second raters plot away within the system, like your master. Arthur knows all about that, but when he is strong, he strikes. His master, he talks about the prime minister. How do you think Rupert Devereux himself came to power? His master killed the previous prime minister in a coup 20 years ago, and he inherited the title. That's the truth of it. That is how things are always done. When I use the amulet next week, he's saying, what am I going to do? I'm going to replace the prime minister. He mentions William Gladstone, the very name Nathaniel wanted to take. It may console you to know that even before you arrived, I was resolved to kill you and everyone in this house. And Nathaniel's thinking not of himself, not of his master, but of Mrs. Underwood. You are weak, boy, just like your master. Take the boy, leave me, his master cries. So, Nathaniel and Bartimaeus grabs Nathaniel, takes him, bottom of 299. Nathaniel cries, Mrs. Underwood, there's a fire. Bartimaeus takes him, bottom of 300. My master, Bartimaeus says, is dead, swallowed whole, most probably. Mrs. Underwood is no doubt with her husband. You can't help her now. Mrs. Underwood, Nathaniel, top of 301, says, notice, doesn't finish. Bartimaeus would not want you to die too. Yes, it is your fault, but don't blame yourself. Life's for the living, and whatever. Notice, I ran out of steam, meaning I don't have any more stupid human platitudes. Look at his footnote. Psychology of this sort is not my strong suit. I haven't a clue what motivates most humans, and care even less. With magicians, it's usually pretty simple. That is, what motivates magicians? They fall into three distinct types, motivated by ambition, greed, or paranoia. Underwood, he was paranoid, from what I'd seen of him. Lovelace, ambition. The boy was of the ambitious kind as well, but he was still young, unformed. Hence, this sudden, ridiculous burst of altruism. What does Bartimaeus mean? What is he suggesting all magicians ultimately become? Slytherin, if you're familiar with Harry Potter. Ambition. What does ambition ultimately lead to? What's it the ambition for? raw power to get what one wants. Notice he was still young, unformed. He hasn't yet been what? Shaped into that mold. So because he hasn't been shaped into that mold, he still has what kind of ideas? One, his own. Two, unshaped, unmolded, untaught. That is, natural ideas. Shared possibly, with other non-magical humans. Ideas like what? Nobility, loyalty, responsibility. Well, those are all ideas that being a magician get beaten out of you or trained out of you if you want. All right? So, Bartimaeus rescues him. They get away from the house, and the house is destroyed. And we get part 3. Okay? They go into an abandoned library, and page 311, a couple minutes left. Bartimaeus says, "You want me to help you with the cold? All you have to do is ask. I could make a fire. A nice hot one, got plenty of control over that element." And he makes a little fire in his hand. Says, you want some fire, kid? You want to warm up? Okay. You only have to ask, oh my master. I do it as a favor. That's what friends are for. Friends. Friends aren't bound, aren't enslaved to others. Okay? So, Nathaniel says, yes, make me a fire. Notice, he doesn't say, please, make me a fire is what? It's a command. Is he in a pentacle? Nope. What's Bartimaeus saying here? Or possibly, what's Bartimaeus showing here? Is he a quote-unquote demon that is sly, untrusting, simply wants to harm all humans? Maybe not. Okay, we'll stop there. We'll pick up with somewhere around 3:12. I wanted to get up to about 3:40. And finish this probably on Wednesday. If we don't finish it on Wednesday, we'll definitely finish it on Friday.